Thaddeus Stevens College of Technology, in cooperation with the J. Morales Group, presents this training as a single diversity and inclusion module for staff, students, faculty, and supporters of the college. This training module includes a brief summary of the legacy of Thaddeus Stevens, a pre-test, a discussion of diversity and inclusion concepts, and an explanation of unconscious bias. There will also be a description of Bulldog Spirit and the role it plays on the Thaddeus Stevens College campus. A simple post-test and session evaluation will complete this first module in the series. Please pause the video at this point to take the paper pre-test that's been provided to you. You may resume the training upon completion of the 5-question pre-test. Congratulations! You just completed the pre-test. Now you're ready to find out more about the person most responsible for your being here today. Watch this short video to learn about the many contributions of a man most of us only know as the creator of the 14th Amendment, or maybe the serious-looking character in our history books and campus portraits. Let's meet Thaddeus Stevens, one of Lancaster County's most accomplished citizens.
Thaddeus Stevens and the men who legislated with him in the 1860s brought about the greatest American legislative revolution in our nation after the Bill of Rights.
He epitomizes the core value of this country, that all persons are created equal.
The movie Lincoln, for the first time, portrayed Thaddeus Stevens as the kind of visionary politician that he really was. What he did was take the values of Lancaster County, and he represented them in the nation in a way that made a national impact.
He had a 47-year quest or crusade to free African Americans, to abolish slavery in the United States. 47 years.
He understood what it was to be judged on your appearance alone, as because of how he was treated in growing up because of his club foot. So he understood how people of color were treated.
That's why he became such a strong abolitionist. He couldn't stand to see the injustice and the discrimination.
He was dogmatic, unyielding. If you were with him, you were in good. Heaven help you if you were against him.
He was an incredible parliamentarian. He knew parliamentary tricks. He has been said to be the greatest parliamentarian in U.S. history. Even though our republic was founded on the idea that all men are created equal, as Thomas Jefferson said, that was not law until the 14th Amendment was passed. The 14th Amendment is the greatest legacy that Thaddeus Stevens has left us in his tenure in office.
As we proceed through our history, we will look back on the contributions of Thaddeus Stevens during the period of time of Abraham Lincoln as being very, very important to the entire span of the country's history.
He was very much ahead of his time. As a matter of fact, he's probably still ahead of our time.
Now you know a little more about why Thaddeus Stevens is much more than just a historical figure. Every American owes a debt to Thaddeus Stevens, but students of this college should recognize it much more than others. You are here right now because of Thaddeus Stevens' lifelong commitment to justice, diversity, and equal access to education and the American promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everyone. Thaddeus Stevens College of Technology is committed to cultivating a campus climate that celebrates diversity and inclusion in all of its forms. Diversity and inclusion is about far more than just race or ethnicity. Early childhood experiences and your personal family upbringing play a large role in how you see the world and people who are different or the same as you today. In order to understand diversity, you have to understand that your experiences determine in large part your current worldview and your perceptions about the topic of diversity and inclusion. Your personal biography is key to who you are now and how you see the world around you. Did you grow up riding a tractor, working on a farm, or live in an urban community where you took the subway to school on a daily basis? In his book, The Inclusion Paradox, The Obama Era, and the Transformation of Global Diversity, author Andres Tapia describes diversity as ultimately being about biography, one's unique life path that shapes how each of us understands how the world works and how we choose to be actors in it. Understanding that diversity and inclusion is ultimately about biography is a good first step, but it's only the beginning. Understanding the difference between diversity and inclusion is also important. Using this metaphor, diversity is ultimately about being invited to the party. On the other hand, inclusion is like being asked to dance. Companies and organizations that include a variety of people from ethnic backgrounds and different parts of the world certainly have diversity. But unless those folks are invited to participate fully in the activities, the decision-making, and the benefits that the company or organization provides, it's really not being fully inclusive. So diversity and inclusion need to go hand in hand. In the year 2017, the entire planet's human population is nearly 7.5 billion people. It is projected to exceed 11 billion by the year 2100. The diversity of cultures, customs, races, religions, languages, governments, and social norms are staggering. Still, we are connected by our shared humanity as a species. The following short video imagines what the world might look like if the entire population of the planet was shrunk to a village of just 100 people, keeping the same proportions. Our miniature Earth might look very different than the world we see in our own part of Pennsylvania or in the United States. As you watch the video, think of at least one fact or idea that's particularly surprising or interesting. There will be a couple of questions at the end. So, did any of these facts or factoids surprise you? Does it surprise you that some people in the world live on $1 or even $2 a day? Was it a surprise to know that if you own a house, sleep in a bed, put your food in a refrigerator, and keep your clothes in a closet, you're richer than most of the people on planet Earth? Now let's take a look a little closer to home. This colorful graphic illustrates clearly how the face of the United States has changed from 1960 to the 2010 census, and takes it a step further to show what the world will look like for Americans in the year 2060. In Thaddeus Stevens' home state of Pennsylvania, we see a similar demographic pattern. While whites continue to be the majority, increased representation by African Americans in and around urban areas, as well as significant increases in the Latino populations of Berks, Lancaster, and York counties along the so-called Route 222 corridor are obvious on this map. Are you beginning to see why diversity and inclusion are so highly valued on the Stevens campus? The Thaddeus Stevens legacy and ongoing mission are only part of the reason why your chosen college acknowledges and cultivates this value. An expanding body of research is highlighting the correlation between genuine diversity and a better-looking bottom line. Attracting the best employees, increased creativity, improved productivity, and an increased ability to compete in a diverse world marketplace are just a few of the reasons why diversity and inclusion are being embraced by corporations around the world. Every year, Diversity Incorporated magazine recognizes companies that exemplify the implementation and successes of diverse organizations large and small. AT&T, MasterCard, Johnson & Johnson, Kellogg's, Toyota, and the Walt Disney Company are just some of those on the list in recent years. In addition to improving workplace relationships and adding revenue to the bottom line, diversity and inclusion efforts also make people smarter. A 2014 article in Scientific American magazine shares research that shows how interacting with people who are different actually makes you a smarter, harder working individual. Who knew? Because your biography plays such an important role in developing your worldview, it can be difficult to fully embrace new ideas and behavior models even if you really want to change. Human beings are hardwired to prefer people who are most like themselves. It's in our DNA to be initially suspicious of people who are different from us. Overcoming these natural urges to stick to our own tribes is why honest discussions about diversity and inclusion are so important. Around the world and in our own neighborhoods, we see evidence of this natural attraction in our preference or choice of religious beliefs, hobbies, politics, social circles, and even our taste in music or foods. So, generally speaking, unconscious bias is simply our natural people preferences. If you're a Catholic Democrat who really likes football, hunting, and old movies, you are likely to be drawn to individuals or groups who have similar interests. The comfort we find in like-minded friends who may or may not look like us is how some unconscious biases are formed. Psychologists tell us that we are hardwired to prefer people who look like us, sound like us, and share our interest. Although we may be aware of some of our natural preferences, our biases can affect our perceptions or behavior towards others, whether we realize it or not. That's why it's very often unconscious. So, what is your tribe? Who are your people? These three striking-looking individuals would probably draw stares in almost any American community. Yet in their own social groups, they would be immediately recognized and welcomed. The bright feathers, face paint, and jewelry of this Amazonian man is perfectly normal in his own group. The ceremonial scarring on the face of the woman in the middle would be immediately recognized in her own African village. And the tusk-like piercings combined with the color and style of his clothing may indicate the status of the man on the right among his own people. The ability to distinguish friend from foe helped our early human ancestors survive, and the ability to quickly and automatically categorize people still a fundamental quality of the human mind. Just think about how we meet someone for the first time and immediately size them up, making quick mental notes of their clothes, physical characteristics, body shape, social status, and maybe even the way they speak. This instant assessment of others is usually going on whether you are conscious of it or not. The flip side of this unconscious assessment is that others are doing the very same thing to you, although you are typically most aware of it when the differences between you and others is more easily noticed. In other words, you don't think much about your difference until it becomes more obvious depending on the place you're in and the people you're with. Our own self-awareness is tied directly to the level of comfort we might find in our sameness or the nervous, out-of-place feeling we might have being amongst a group of people who are very different from us. Take a look at each of these photos and imagine if you could step into the image and join the people that you see. Which people and places would provide you the greatest degree of comfort? Would you like to join the people drinking champagne at an upscale cocktail party? Or maybe you would prefer hanging out with the hospital employees or the tattooed motorcyclist. Depending on your biography and your people preferences, you might enjoy stepping into the group of small game hunters or a rowdy crowd of college students attending a school rally. Okay, so now you know a little more about the role of our biography and how unconscious bias can affect our outlook on the world, at least in theory. You probably see it in your daily life without realizing it because it's so common to all human beings. What's going on in these two images? Why are these motorcyclists waving to each other? Do you think they know each other? Maybe, but it's much more likely that each rider has been exposed to the customary greeting of other riders as part of an unspoken cultural agreement between a group of people who share a common interest. But bikers aren't alone in this practice. Anyone who has ever been on a boat is familiar with these greetings too. Boaters on lakes, rivers, and oceans almost always greet each other with waves on the waves. The little girl in the photo is learning this custom at a very early age, just like most of us learn cultural norms from the adults around us. Do you know other travelers who greet each other this way? Jeep owners, VW Bug drivers, and even Mazda Miata drivers will flip their headlights like blinking eyes to greet other Miata owners that they pass on the road. When our upbringing and natural people preferences lead us to exclude or mistreat others because of individual or group differences, it can lead to misunderstanding, conflict, or the violation of laws created to reduce or eliminate the possibility of unwarranted discrimination. Our people preferences can bypass our normal, rational, and logical thinking. We use these processes very effectively, but the categories we use to sort people are not always logical, modern, or perhaps even legal. Our inherent cultural biases can operate almost automatically and without our even realizing it. That's why federal employment laws were created to ensure that no person could be excluded, harassed, or mistreated because of their difference. In 1964, the United States government saw fit to create the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, a federal agency that administers and enforces civil rights laws. Every employer in America is bound by these laws and must take steps to ensure that no discriminatory practices occur and to immediately address them if and when they do. Specifically, the EEOC enforces laws designed to protect each of the following groups of people: men and women on the basis of sex, any group which shares a common race, religion, color, or national origin, people over the age of 40, and people with physical or mental handicaps. On its website and in much of its literature, the EEOC strongly encourages every employer to create an inclusive workplace culture. They offer support to help every restaurant, factory, farm, or school, regardless of size, to train human resource managers and all employees on EEO laws, train managers, supervisors, and employees on its contents, enforce it, and hold them accountable. Promote an inclusive culture in the workplace by fostering an environment of professionalism and respect for personal differences, and establish neutral and objective criteria to avoid subjective employment decisions based on personal stereotypes or hidden cultural biases. By this point, you might be wondering whether you have any unconscious cultural biases of your own. Everybody does. Biography and cultural influences assure that 100% of all people have some type of conscious or unconscious bias. The implicit association test is a free and confidential online tool available to anyone interested in determining the level of their own bias. Harvard University and the Southern Poverty Law Center created the assessment for people who seek to identify their level of bias in order to reduce or eliminate them through education. You can simply type implicit association test into your web browser to try it in the privacy of your own dorm or private residence. So far, we've learned from Andres Tapia that diversity is ultimately about biography, one's unique life path that shapes how each of us understands how the world works and how we choose to be actors in it. We also heard about the unconscious cultural biases and how every person harbors some degree of bias depending on their upbringing and numerous cultural influences. Knowing that our biases can operate in our subconscious makes it important to expand your comfort zone by addressing personal biases honestly and directly. Another key factor in the diversity and inclusion equation is federal law. The EEOC protects people from discriminatory business practices by encouraging the cultivation of organizational culture that supports diversity in all of its forms. Before we get to the post-test, let's take another look at the college's namesake and how the life work of Thaddeus Stevens led to your being here at this College of Technology. His legacy and the powerful impact of the college's mission is summed up nicely in the words of the man himself. Mr. Stevens is quoted as saying, "I will be satisfied if my epitaph shall be written thus. Here lies one who never rose to any eminence, who only courted the low ambition to have it said that he striven to ameliorate the condition of the poor, the lowly, the downtrodden of every race and language and color." You're listening to this today because he succeeded. You are now part of this legacy too. Being part of the Stevens legacy and this campus community comes with a responsibility. It's your responsibility to embrace and develop bulldog spirit. We'll describe exactly what that means in a minute, but first here's a bit of trivia. Did you know that before the official school mascot became the bulldog, students and athletes at the school were known as the Traders? It was changed in part because the name was often confused with the unflattering term traitors. Thaddeus Stevens himself possessed personality traits that we now like to call bulldog spirit. Some of the same qualities that helped him succeed can help you too. Some of the same traits that helped him succeed as a legislator and civil rights advocate can help you too. Bulldog spirit is 3 simple but powerful ideas that should inspire anyone who takes them to heart. First of all, you can't force a bulldog to do anything. That's right. You can't be forced to embrace diversity, inclusion, or the Stevens legacy. And no one will try to force it on you. It's something you have to decide is right for yourself. Secondly, a bulldog gets along with everyone. Getting along with everyone because it's the right thing to do is something you must learn, accept, and practice for the rest of your life. And finally, once a bulldog learns something, she's got it for life. Historians tell us that Thaddeus Stevens could be stubborn and difficult to convince sometimes, but he learned to accept certain facts in order to accomplish higher goals. You can't force a bulldog to do anything. and a bulldog gets along with everyone. And finally, once a bulldog learns something, she's got it for good. Each of these traits are needed to honor the legacy of Thaddeus Stevens and this college. They also happen to be the AKC characteristics for the champion bulldog breed. Whether you're a student, faculty, staff, or supporter of the college, it is our sincere hope that you take bulldog spirit and the content of this training to heart. So far we've learned from Andres Tapia that diversity is ultimately about biography, one's unique life path that shapes how each of us understands how the world works and how we choose to be actors in it. We also heard about unconscious cultural bias and how every person harbors some degree of bias depending upon their upbringing and numerous cultural influences. Knowing that our biases can operate in our subconscious makes it important to expand our comfort zones by addressing personal biases honestly and directly. Another key factor in the diversity and inclusion equation is federal law. The EEOC protects people from discriminatory business practices by encouraging the cultivation of organizational culture that supports diversity in all of its forms. In doing so, you will advance the causes to which Thaddeus Stevens devoted his life. You will also reap the many benefits of a diverse and inclusive approach to life on and off campus. Finally, and most importantly, you will honor the legacy of Thaddeus Stevens, who asked that we honor him with our gratitude and our actions to create a more just society through education. He said, "I shall feel myself abundantly rewarded for all my efforts in behalf of universal education if a single child, educated by the Commonwealth, shall drop a tear of gratitude on my grave." Whether you visit his gravesite or not, we hope that this training will assist you in your effort to honor him by your actions, to create a more just society through understanding and ongoing educational success. Please stop the video at this point and complete the paper post-test provided to you. The completed pre- and post-test should be turned in at the collection point indicated by the college. Thank you, and good luck with all of your educational and professional endeavors.